Hello, I'm Greg Newton, and I'm a board-certified master consulting hypnotist and licensed hypnotherapist with the state of Washington. And I'm going to talk to you today about the origins of modern hypnotism. And to do that, we're going to have to go back to the late 1700s and talk about a physician from Vienna by the name of Franz Anton Mesmer. Now, Anton Mesmer had a very different practice from his contemporaries. He had a different approach where he would talk with his patients and use very unconventional techniques with them in a group and put them around a vessel that would be filled with water, usually an oak tub in the center of a room, and be ornately appointed with velvet curtains. And then he would make sure that the settings were dim, and he would act kind of like a shaman, and he would perform these rituals. And during these rituals, or ceremonies, I'm not quite sure what he called them, but what he would do is he would perform these phrases and things, and people would be staring at this tub, and in this tub there would be these iron rods sticking out that would look like antennae, and people would stare at the rod that's kind of corresponding to where they're at in this circle. There'd be one pointing at them, looking at it, fixated on it, and eventually they would go into a trance. Some of the people experiencing this trance-like state would then have a physiological reaction, mainly because they're sort of sitting in that trance-like state and there is really no one guiding them. Some of them would convulse, some of them would scream out, just have some sort of reaction. And invariably, the ailments that they were coming to Dr. Mesmer to get cured of, many of them were seeing cures, or they were seeing an alleviation of pain or other symptoms. And so this really started to catch the attention of the scientific establishment at the time, mainly because they were losing business. So they had the French Academy of Sciences investigate, and what they did is they formed a commission of scientists and other researchers and minds of the period to investigate Dr. Mesmer. What they concluded is that Mesmer theorized, or at least maybe beyond theorized, this is what he said was happening, is that there's this invisible current that is flowing through living things. You can almost think of it like the force, but he called it animal magnetism. An invisible current like electricity that flowed through us, and you could charge an object with his animal magnetism. And he said that illness of all of its different forms came from impediments or blockages in the current. And with his knowledge, with the right rituals and incantations, he could restore balance, he could restore the flow. And the sessions that he conducted were very dramatic. Sometimes, like I said, convulsions, and sometimes people would faint. Others would burst into tears through these realizations they would have while in trance. This proved to them that this animal magnetism was working, and that this vessel they were staring at, this rod, was somehow realigning their bodies and curing them. Well, some of the people on this panel, one you would know of, is Benjamin Franklin, who at the time, actually his entire life, was a world-leading knowledge on everything to do with electromagnetism. Basically, him and his compatriots investigate Mesmer. And what they determined is that this whole animal magnetism thing is nonsense. We know that that's not real, and that really there is no mysterious fluid. There's nothing like that. However, they couldn't argue with what was happening to these people that were getting better, and they were having better success with what Mesmer was doing than what was happening with conventional medicine at the time. Unfortunately, because of this debunking, that his theory, his postulation, if that's a word, I'm inventing it if it is, why he postulated, this is why it works. This is the mechanism was just nonsense. It absolutely wasn't true. That's all people seized on. And so he lost all credibility and ruined Mesmer. So his techniques he still has his fanfare. There are people that really believe in him. He has those cultish following, and his stuff sort of gets relegated into academic obscurity and into carnivals, into sideshows, into the spectacle, watch my swinging watch, or if you've ever seen what we call stage hypnosis, which is something I'm well practiced in. I don't do it with my clients. It's not very helpful from a improving your life standpoint to make you cluck like a chicken. Nothing I have any interest in doing. But what it basically did is it stayed alive. And then around about the time of the 1840s, a Scottish surgeon by the name of James Braid, who was traveling and caught one of these shows, I think in Edinburgh, and it was one of these traveling mesmerist shows. He watches carefully. He's got a scientific mind, and he observes what's going on. What he notices is that as the people are fixating their eyes on the hypnotist and what the hypnotist is having them do, their attention narrows and their bodies start to change in their physiological response. And he sees some potential in this. He's very curious as to what the phenomenon is. And he takes this back to his clinic. He tries it with his patients. And he notices that when he uses certain things to fatigue their concentration, get them to focus on something, they slip into a deep altered state, or at least is what he calls it. He comes up with this term. Previously, the effect was called mesmer, to be mesmerized. He calls his term hypnosis, which is the Greek word for sleep. But very quickly, after using this for a little while, he realizes the mistake he's made as he starts to talk about it. He's very excited about this discovery of his. And he realizes that it's not sleep at all, that in fact, it is concentration, it is focused concentration. And he uses this to an amazing amount of success. He's able to perform minor surgery with it. Now, we're still in the 1800s, and this is before chloroform, this is before anesthetic. That'll be discovered later, actually, in Edinburgh, of all places, by another Scottish physician. And surgery, at this point in time, it's brutal. You're strapped down. It is really no different than the medieval era. It is bite down on something. It's horrific. Painkillers, morphine, these things are maybe known to a few people. Like, it's a very esoteric substance. It's essentially unknown. So there's nothing. If anything that can relieve this pain, and this has promise, catches on. So two physicians start to popularize it, John Eliotson and James Esdale, in India, of all places, start performing surgeries in Calcutta using nothing but hypnosis to anesthetize their patients, and they perform hundreds of surgeries. Now, other than just being a convenient way to eliminate pain, what they notice is that these people heal faster, they have better patient outcomes. They actually do better than the people that don't receive hypnosis and anesthetic effects from it before having the procedure. So this really turns them into believers, and they bring this back with them, and it starts to grow in popularity, at least in academic circles, at least in the scientific realms. It's not popular yet, but there are people that know about it. And one of those people that catches on to it is Sigmund Freud. And Sigmund Freud is in Paris, and he studies with Charcot and Bernheim, and he's trying to help people with their anxiety, mental issues. I'm not sure what he calls it then, but these sort of disconnects between happiness and how I should live and how I feel. And what he notices is that when he puts people into these trances, because now these techniques are starting to evolve, we can reproduce the hypnotic experience, even though we don't like to call it that. He notices that for these patients of his that have trauma in their past, that when he hypnotizes some of them, these traumatic memories that are usually inaccessible become accessible. And profound things happen. However, he gets spooked. He's unprepared. I mean, this is kind of the undiscovered country. He is tapped into something he doesn't quite understand. He's tapped into the unconscious and subconscious mind. He is speaking to it. And in one of those instances, something happens. One of his female patients in one of these transference events, becomes enamored, throws her arms around him, and this unnerves him and embarrasses him. And he decides that hypnosis is something he has no ability to predict, and he likes prediction. So he gives up on it. It's a little too powerful for him. And instead he goes down a different path in his study, and he wants to be famous. Let's not forget about Freud. And he develops something based on free association, which is you just sort of, well, tell me about your mother, that kind of thing. And sort of what comes off the top of your head. And for him, that is how he understands what's going on underneath. And there actually is utility in that. However, that is what we then think of as psychoanalysis, where you can think of as hypnosis being the first indication of Western psychotherapy. It gives birth to what we think of as modern psychoanalysis, which is strange because it actually comes back into the fold a little later on. Now, fast forward a little bit to World War II, and there are soldiers that are flooding hospitals, and not necessarily for the wounds that you can see. They have something that at the time they call shell shock, and they don't know what causes it other than too many things blew up around you. These people are haunted by nightmares, flashbacks, tremors. They can't sleep. I mean, they are tortured from within. Psychiatrists are literally overwhelmed. Like there is just an entire nation driven by the greatest generation that this country has ever known to defend it and really to defend the free world. And that took an amazing amount of human power to do that. And the carnage and the aftermath of that was devastating. So psychiatrists had their hands full. They had to use every tool in the toolbox. Well, hypnosis is the one they relied on, particularly in battlefield conditions, because they don't have time to therapize somebody for months and months. They need to get them stabilized. They need to get them on a path to where they are self-sufficient. And so they start using hypnosis in battlefield conditions in World War II, and they are impressed. This is where it takes off. This is where we see the lifelong advocacy from mental health professionals for hypnosis. And so by 1958, it's recognized by the American Medical Association really as a bona fide treatment for a whole range of disorders. I have many of these on my website as to where it's applicable, like the mind-body connection, how the mind actually promotes healing in the body, actually controls it. It's phenomenal. And so this really spurs investment in understanding and research. It grows in popularity, it becomes more and more common. And it is also, oddly enough, I wasn't born in 1958, but it is also part of my story. And in one of these series, I will tell you about it. Anyway, that's it for now. Look forward to my next one where I talk about what is hypnosis and the science behind it. Anyway, thank you.